Hey everybody, JD here, and we are on episode number 14, 15, 17, I don't know. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Fish with JD TV, and this time it's by request. I've had so many people write me, text me, email me, call me, anything, asking about how you troll the good old rotating flashers for salmon in the river. So, since salmon season, at least here in California, opened up this last month, it's time to start thinking about fall salmon. And this is a technique that goes from the Columbia north and the Columbia all the way down to the Sacramento River and beyond. So it's kind of the in thing these days. And so I figured I'd show you the nuts and bolts. Now, one disclaimer, and that is there are a bunch of ways to skin this cat. This is the way I do it. I've been very successful. Very successful. So, God, I can't even say that. Successful. There we go. Been very successful doing this over the years. And actually, I was doing it on the Sacramento River for a long time, very incognito. I'd have everybody keep their rods down when another boat went by, trying to keep it secret. Well, it's cat's out of the bag now. So anyway, we're going to just kind of lay it out. And again, this is just one guy's take on it. There's a lot of ways to do this, so keep that in mind. What works here may need a little bit of adjustment wherever you're fishing. So, but this will get you the basics that get you started. And so, without further ado, oh, by the way, for you live viewers right now, you can hit the comments buttons on the or the comment section on Facebook and YouTube. And if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and hit me up. I'll try to hit them as quickly as I can and get to all of them. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at, oh, we already got a comment. Hang on. So we'll hit this one real quick and then we'll get into it. James Kramer, do you have to worry about high tide and low tide when anchor fishing for the salmon on the Sacramento River with a quick fish lure? Yes. Yeah. I mean, the tide down in the Sacramento area, and we don't want to get too area specific because this is, for everywhere, but basically you're going to have a faster wobble to your plug when the tide's going out, and it's going to slow down a little bit when it's coming in. But the tide doesn't, or very, very, very rarely, just during the drought years, I've seen it turn around. But other than that, you don't have a two-way swing. It's just kind of a rise and fall. So anyway, all right, we will get to more questions. I'm sure we'll have a bunch, but let's kind of get into this, and I'll show you again, just kind of the nuts and bolts. So let me see if I can make this work. There we go. All right. So there's the basic rig, right? The flasher and the cut plug. Now there's different ways to go about all that too. And we'll get into that. Let me see if I can switch the pictures here. Okay. So this one, here's just the starter rig. This is off of Brad's website, and this is as good a rig as any. So if you take a look here, we have several components. It's kind of a complex rig, and man, when you lose one of these setups, you're gonna hate yourself because it costs you like $50, and not to mention all the time setting it up. But anyway, so I'm gonna start with 65-pound braid. That's what I use, 50 or 65. Kind of depends on if you got to really get down deep, you might have to go with a little thinner braid like 50. Where I'm fishing, it's 18 to 30 feet, we'll call it. So I don't have to get down that deep. So I'm not so worried about having too wide a diameter line. And it sounds funny, but the diameter of your line really affects how deep your rig will troll. The wider, the thicker the line, the heavier the line will cause more sweep back behind the boat, and you'll have to put on more weight to get down. So there you go with that. So anyway, 65-pound, 50-pound braid, something like that. And on this picture here, you can see we have a sinker slider and a lead weight. I sometimes run a dropper, and sometimes I just run it like this. And for those of you that don't know what a dropper is, just take a look at the sinker right there. Between the sinker and the swivel, sometimes I'll add a section of line down to the lead. And that's usually when I'm fishing the bottom. I want to hit that bottom and then come up a little bit, and I know I'm down in the zone. Now, a lot of times when you're fishing this way for kings, the bottom isn't always in play. What I mean by that is the fish are suspended a lot. And I can't tell you, on a given day where they're going to be. So usually I'm going to start fishing down deeper unless I see some on the screen, and I just, you can't help but go down to, they're only at 8 feet, drop it down 8 feet. But for the most part, salmon generally travel near the bottom. Now in the Columbia and places like that are really deep, sometimes those fish are suspended 20, 30 feet off the bottom. So you have to kind of play around with it. But if you're not bouncing the bottom very often, I would go with this rig here that's on the screen without a dropper. Just keeps things more simple. Okay, so then you have a plastic bead there. That's just kind of act as a bumper to keep your weight slider from banging on your knot. And then a bead chain swivel. Bead chains are really important in this whole thing. Trying to keep, you got stuff going like this, and then the lure's spinning, and you got a lot of twist capability or probability. So bead chain swivel is really handy to have. And then the next thing that's interesting here, and I'll get into the nuts and bolts of all this a little bit later, but the next thing you see on here is 2 feet of 50-pound mono. Okay, so I amend that a little bit, and we'll get into that. But this is just sort of the we're just kind of giving you a little roadmap of what the rig looks like to begin with. So that leader, we call it a bumper leader, between the sinker and the flasher. If you put the sinker right next to the flasher, let me grab a flasher. So if you put a sinker right here, it's just going to cause this thing to go like that, and it doesn't give it that range of motion. So that's why we have to separate those two, so there's a little room for this flasher to work. Now, how far you make that, that's up to you, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And the next component is the flasher, of course. We'll talk about those. And then you have a leader, and there's a whole bunch of ways to go about how long you run your leader. And then, of course, the bottom end, the live end, is the lure. In this case, a Brad's cut plug, but there's a lot of options there too as well. So anyway, here we go. So that's just kind of an overview. Now we're going to zoom in a little bit and have a closer look at some of this stuff. So we're going to rig up first, okay? And you can't just go out there and run, like a steelhead rod or something. You're gonna, you can fish that way, but if I hate to say that you have to go out and buy specific stuff for this, but you kind of do, because this rig is pretty specialized, and not just any rod and reel is going to do for it. So, again, don't go take a second out on your house to buy a couple rigs for this, but maybe you have something along these lines. So when we're talking rods, okay, the first thing I'm looking at for a rod here is I want something with a little bit of a soft tip. By soft tip, I mean it's got some give to it. I don't want it to bend all the way to the cork. That's too soft. That's too parabolic. But I want a rod that's got some give to the tip. What that does is, first off, allows when a fish bites, he can pull that rig down and pull your tip down and not feel as much resistance. Therefore, you're going to get a better hook set on him. He's not going to drop it as fast. Also, you can watch your rod tip, and you can tell how fast you're trolling, and kind of just, right, they call it reading the tip. So when this thing's down there doing its thing, you can watch your rod tip kind of react to it. And that's how you adjust your speed and kind of know if this thing isn't working right, then it kind of registers in your rod tip. There's something going on. So you want to be able to have a tip. If you have too stiff of a tip, I guess would be a better way to say it. If you have too stiff of a tip, you're not going to be able to read what's going on down below. And that since you can't see obviously down there, being able to see what's going on with your tip is super handy. So I want a rod that's going to give a little bit in the tip so I can read it, so the fish can bite it and not feel a lot of resistance initially. Okay. But like I said before, the rod has to shut off. And what I mean by that is, you can see here the tip of this rod is bent, but he's got some power in that lower rod. So when that fish starts to surge down below the boat, you can lift him up. If that rod's bending all the way to the cork, you're not going to be able to lift him. You hook that fish of a lifetime, you're going to be powerless. Or the sea lion's coming at you and you want to get him out of the water faster, you need something with a little lift. So that's where having some backbone, some lower, it's called the rod shutting off. So here the rod is shutting off about 2/3 of the way up. So it's got some give in the tip, and then it's got some power in the lower end. So that's what we're looking at. Now, the two models that I use are both from Douglas Outdoors, awesome rods. And they're their LRS series, which are really, really incredibly designed by my buddy Fred Cantawi, who is a master rod designer guy. And these things have been so thought out, and they for the price, holy smokes. I mean, we're talking retail plus or minus right around that $200 range. you really can't find a better rod in that range for these. And I use them every day for every kind of fish I fish for. Not these specific models, mind you, but the LRS rods. So what I'm using, and we're going to get into the diagrams of what the spread kind of looks like, but my back rods, which are my shorter rods, going off straight off the transom, are going to be 8.3, and in this case, I'm using the LRS 835M, which is just it's really one of the coolest rods out there. I mean, not only do I troll like this for salmon with it, but you can drift for halibut, bait fish for stripers, troll for stripers. I mean, I catch sturgeon on it. I mean, it's a great all around rod. So on the side rods, I want longer. We call them the outrigger rods because we don't want all that stuff too close to the boat, too close together. It's like when you're downrigger trolling, you know how stuff kind of gets too close together. It's the same thing here. So we're running some rods straight off the back of the boat. Then I have these longer rods, the LRS 9652, which is 2-piece medium action. And these are 9.5 feet long. So these go off the side. So you have a little more, just a wider spread. So again, we're trying to keep, well, we're covering more water that way, but we're also trying to keep everything, from getting into a huge cluster fugazi. So there you have that. All right. So this kind of lends itself to a question we got here from Jack Johnson. Let's see if I can make it. There we go. Do you recommend a bait caster or spinning rod and reel for the setup? Absolutely 100% bait caster, never spinning rod on this because you'll just have so much tangle. Typically, your spinning rods aren't going to be strong enough, powerful enough to, or not spinning rods, but spinning reels. You're going to get a lot of line twists, not enough power, not enough line capacity. So definitely go with bait casters, Jack. And that leads me to the reels that I use. Whoops. Go away, Jack. Sorry. Here we go. So as far as the reels go, I've got some of the old school. I know they've redesigned these, but the old school on the left here, the Dakota 300 LCs, I've had these for, I don't know, going on 15 years. Super bulletproof, not that expensive. I mean, they're not cheap. I think they're $160 or something, maybe. I mean, they're under 200. And I've had them fly out of the boat on the freeway, gone back and got them. I mean, just crazy how durable these things are. I have the drags fixed every year or so and lubed and stuff, but incredibly bulletproof. I've also started using the last few years these Daiwa Lexa Cs, the line counter, or LCs, and those have been really good too. I would say, I mean, I've had zero issues with them. I've only had them for a couple years. Either one's a great choice. That Dakota is hard to beat. Now, I haven't tried the new ones, and usually, in my experience, Shimano takes something really good, and then they, like the Corrado, and then they kind of make it not as good. So anyway, that's what we're going with. And again, 50 to 65 pound braid. I'm using the P-line, whatever braid you like. P-line works great for me. Typically, I like to use some, like in this picture here, fluorescent colored lines so I can kind of see where everybody's gear is. It just helps. Where I'm fishing the Sacramento rivers, it's not very clear, so they're not real line shy at all. If you're somewhere where the water is super clear, you might want to go with a darker colored braid. So anyway, here we go. So next, so now we're going to zoom in a little more on the gear here on the rig. As far as the weight goes, that totally depends on where you are. Again, you want to get your gear down near the bottom, and some places you're going to need 16 ounces, a pound of lead, like on the Columbia. Here on the Sac, 6 to 12 is kind of what I use, depending on the depth, the speed of the current, the tide. Again, we're just trying to keep stuff down, and we're trying to keep stuff fairly close to the boat, straight down. I mean, if the farther back you get, everything kind of has a chance to, especially on a turn, start to kind of come together. So I like to keep things kind of short and tight and straight down as much as possible. And then, okay, so now we're going to go, we talked about the weights and the beads and all that, but next thing you notice, I crossed out the mono on the bumper leader. And again, the bumper leader, let me see, I've got one right here. The bumper leader, if I can do this. The bumper leader is the section that goes from your weight to your flasher, okay? So your main line, your weight goes here, your bumper leader, and your flasher. And again, the thing is with this, is the length of this. Again, you don't want to be close right here, because if you do, this thing's not going to have a chance to move around. It's kind of angled down, just doesn't work right. So having it further away from each other, having a little separation there, allows the flasher to do its thing. Now, there's different ideas on how close you should run your leader and your sinker together. The closer they are together, the more of a kind of tight action this thing has. The farther back, you get a little more roll to it. So there's no, I mean, I can't say there's a right or wrong there, because every day is different, every fishery is different, but 20 inches. And so, okay, you'll notice before I get too far off track, let's go back to our little diagram here. You notice we got 2 feet, 20 inches. I mean, there's kind of, there's no hard and fast rule on that. But you notice I crossed out mono. Mono is what we started using. I was using like 80-pound mono on that bumper leader, because fish, I mean, fish aren't even looking at that. So you can run as heavy as you want. Well, since then, people have come out with these, several companies. I don't know if you can really see it there, but we got these wire leaders. And these things are great because they here again, let's get the zoom in here. These wire ones don't twist up. They're durable. You hate to lose them because they're expensive. But oh, my dog's barking. It must be the mailman. But anyway, so the wire ones are the way to go, and the ones I'm using are from Good Day Fishing. And I think I have a picture. Let's see what happened. Oh, I got to go back here. There we go. Good Day Fishing. And you can see they come in 18 to 32 inches. And that's, again, a matter of personal taste and trial and error. I've got the 20s. That just kind of seems like sort of in the middle, works fine. And they're just nice because you don't get all this cluster. Because, again, this thing's spinning, your lure's spinning, and there's just a lot going on. So having that thing as a nice rigid wire is the way to go. Now, again, everything gets more expensive as you keep adding stuff. So, take it with the way you will. But basically, it takes a long time for me to rig all this stuff on there and buy all this stuff. But in the end, when I've got 4 or 6 people on the boat, sure is a lot easier when you don't have things going haywire on you. So Good Day Fishing makes those. I think some other guys are making those too, but those ones are great. They're durable. They're, I don't know what pound test. They're way stronger than you need. And anyway, so, okay, we've been getting a lot of flasher questions, and that's the next piece on the rig. And let's see, I had a couple, let's take a look at some comments here. So Brad says, first year guy, just got a boat and bought some 360s. And what he's talking about is 360 flashers, which we're using here. So welcome to the game, Bradley, and we'll and I notice you have another question about colors, and we'll get to that. So okay, we have the flasher. Now, there are several companies that make them. The thing you need to know about these flashers is we want the 360 kind. That means the kind that revolves upon trolling like this. Okay, that's what. Well, it's probably kind of a little more of an angle like this, but they do this rotation. So you want it to spin like this. You have dodgers which go like this, and you can catch fish on a dodger. Don't get me wrong, but this whole technique really revolves. See what I did there, pun? Around the 360 flasher. Okay. So one of the big things that people make a mistake when they're buying these things is, God, I keep forgetting to hit the button. There we go. So, whoops, there we go. I use the Pro Trolls. Short Bus makes rotating flasher. There's a bunch of companies now. Pro Troll's kind of the original and the OG, as the kids would say. They're all good. I don't know that one, really outfishes the other. It's all about the whole rig and your, where you're fishing and all that. But the Pro Troll are really good. And what's confusing about Pro Troll is they have the hot chip and the Pro chip. You can see here I've got it in green highlighted. The Pro chip is the one you want. And you can see in the red I have with agitator fin. Now, That agitator fin, I've got a picture of that, is this guy right here. So you can see it on this one too, the live one right here, this little fin. That's what kicks this thing around, right? So you want the pro chip, not the hot chip. The hot chip's fine, but for this technique, that's not the one you want. So the way to remember it is, if you want to go pro, use the pro chip. If you want to, I don't know, hot something, use the hot one. But if you want to go pro, use the pro chip because it has a flasher. Now here's one, as an example, that doesn't have it. You can see, let's get it on the camera there. Whoops, that one does. Wrong one. There we go. This one does not have the little fin, whereas the pro chip does. And so this guy is going to flash this way, side to side, whereas the one with the fin is going to roll, right? Okay, and that's the one you want because that's the one that gives us the action that these fish seem to like. Let's see. I think I have, yeah, so there's the hot chip. Again, pro chip, yes. Hot chip, no. And again, the hot chip works great in the ocean for trolling hoochies and that kind of stuff. But for this rotating thing, the 360 flasher, this is what you're looking for. Okay. Now colors, sky's the limit. I keep it real simple. I like a lot of silver. Here's another one, silver. Here's another one, silver. Here's a, silver and green. It's, I don't know. Some people swear up and down one color works better than the other. I think the idea is to draw the fish in with some flash, with some thump from this, the vibrations it's kicking off. And I don't know, do they sit there and go, ooh, yeah, nope, that one's got a green stripe. Nope, that's not the one for me. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe if you get too crazy on the color, get some wacky, I don't know, rainbowy thing or something. I don't know. Won't work as well. But anything, silver and chartreuse, the red and silver, it depends on where you're fishing to. Depends on your water clarity. If you have, I would say if you had some darker water or really deep water, Pro Troll makes these guys, and let's see if I can get it to go. Yeah, there we go. So it's got this light in it, right? So water activated light. And that's not a bad idea if you're fishing really dirty water, but most of the time I'm not fishing anything like that. And that kind of looks like a cop car and a Christmas tree or something. But fish will eat that one when things are a little dirty water. But so I think that somebody asked me, let me see here. Oh yeah, Brad had asked about the colors. So hopefully we got that handled for you. Brad, my top three are silver, silver, and silver. Oh, I'm a simple guy. What can I say? I like to keep things easy and not so many variables to where I can't figure out what's working. So anyway, okay, that's the flasher. Now we have had some people like this one here. Let's get it up. Al San Martinez. Do you recommend the flasher breakaway? Absolutely. And the flasher breakaway, let me show you, is another piece of stuff you need. Just so much junk on these things now. It's a little bit ridiculous. Like I say, if you lose this rig, it's expensive. Okay, let me get to the flasher breakaway. So you can see it in this picture. Let's see, we got another picture of it here, right here. So it's another thing, an aftermarket installation you install here. And let's get a little zoom in for you. So, okay. So up here, don't confuse it with the sinker bumper. That's a whole different thing. The flasher release is here on the side of the flasher, and you install them after, like I say, aftermarket. So it clips onto the top right there. I think you can see that. Yep. And then it attaches back to the bottom. Now what happens is you got this thing going. So we're trolling this way, right? Fish bites and he pops that loose. And so it's kind of like the old cannonball weights when you're trolling out in the ocean, sinker release. That's what happens here. It releases that flasher. And so when you're fighting a fish, now you're just kind of fighting this thing, and it flops up on the surface like this. Let's see. Got a picture of that. Like that. Right there. There it is. Okay. Oops. And so this thing starts surfing. Instead of having to fight the flasher too, that was one of the big things when we first started using these. It was like, you got a heavy weight on there, you got all this junk, you got a big fish, and this license plate, and you're fighting this thing. It's spinning as you're fighting the fish. Well, now when that with the flasher release on there, it pops that thing loose, and now you're just kind of dragging. The flasher's just dragging like that, not going like this. So there's a few manufacturers, and I'm going to go right here and show you the ones I've been using several, but here's the Good Day Fishing one, and that one is on this flasher right here. Two different styles. So again, you got the attachment here, and these you have to cut off the swivel and kind of there's instructions on the package. It's real easy, but this thing pops loose right here when a fish bites. This has got a, here, probably better to zoom in for you here. This thing's got a little bit of a, let's see, where's the best angle? There it is. A little bit of a ball kind of deal. It's just right there, a ball that goes into this little thing here, and it just, you can adjust the tension of the receiving, the female end, and that way it doesn't pop off when you hit a little leaf or something. But I like these a lot. The Good Day Fishing model seems to be my favorite. Now, Hawken Fishing is a company I really, really enjoy. I like a lot of their products. They make one too. Now, theirs is magnetic. So there's a piece. Where is it? There it is. So much junk on here. So theirs is magnetic. You can see that right there. Okay, so when a fish bites, it pops those loose. And it's a very strong set of magnets. Now, the issue for me is I fish a very silty, sandy area. In fact, this one from last season, see if you can see that, has some sand in there. Like, that should be silver because that's a magnet. So if I'm dragging the bottom a little too much or getting too close, or the tide's ripping out and stirring up a bunch of sand, I get some sand caught up in the magnets, and sometimes that causes that thing to fail. Not fail, but to disengage. So they're easier to use, I think, those Hawken ones, because you just hold them together, but they do get a little sandy. So not a huge deal. I mean, I use them both kind of, interchangeably, but the Good Day Fishing one with that sort of little receiver thing, where'd that go? Again, they've got this little ball thing, and it just pops out of there. So your choice. Another thing to buy. So, I mean, we've got a flasher, we've got a sinker, we've got a release, we've got a cable ahead of it. I mean, this thing, again, this gets confusing. So anyway, that's that part of the rig. Let's move on here, because we got a lot to cover. So there's the let's get back to the picture here, picture in picture. There we go. So again, there's the flasher disengaged with the fish on, and you're fighting the fish and the weight, but not so much the flasher. So that's pretty handy. Definitely worth the time and investment on that. And there's a close-up of that's the Good Day Fishing one. You can see the little two ball kind of, it's like a plastic bead chain almost, and it fits into the little black receiver there. And you can, again, adjust the tension with a little screwdriver. So flasher releases, to answer, let's see, we had a couple of different questions about that, but yes, I do recommend those. So hopefully that helps. And then this is an interesting one. So I don't know if you guys have ever fished lures like quick fish, flatfish, mag lips. Not so much the mag lips, but quick fish and flatfish for sure. You've noticed that some of them get bit, like inexplainably. You have 5 of the same color, and only one of them the fish like. The other 4, fish like a couple of them, and one of them they just don't touch. They all look the same to the human eye in the water when you drag them next to the boat. Well, the same holds true with flashers. And I don't know if it's just little kind of imperfections in the manufacturing process or whatever, but some of these things just catch more fish. I don't know if it's got the right vibration. There's something, I mean, I don't know. To the human eye, I'm not sure what it is, but when I notice one flasher starts catching fish, I'll start putting marks on it. So this one has a little happy face on it, as you can see, just with a Sharpie, because I know that one's a killer. And then conversely, if you notice, like, God, this one just doesn't work. It doesn't do its thing in the water. Some of them just kind of are dead. Like all your rods are doing their little wagon thing as the flasher's down there flopping. And there'll be one that's just kind of dead. And you're like, God, that one just doesn't work. I don't know. There's just a little funky angle on the fin or something. Maybe it got too hot in your truck, your boat, your garage, melted a little bit. I don't know. But there's definitely something to each flasher is its own little entity, even though they're all the same model, same color. So just kind of pay attention to that, because you'll notice, like, oh, that one's a fishy one. So that's why I mark them, just so I can keep a track of what's going on. So, all right, finally to the business end of this rig. Of course, the Brad's cut plug, super cut plug, has been the the thing that's kind of started this whole technique. Still one of the great baits. Can't go wrong with the cut plug. There are some other things you can pull behind the flasher. The Yakima bait spin fish. Let's see, I've got one of those here too. This is the small size. Let me get you a little bigger screen here. So spin fish is similar. And again, this is a small size. And Brad's cut plugs come in at least 3 or 4 different sizes. So there's a spin fish this is kind of the traditional salmon size, although people are using the kokanee size for Chinook too. That's kind of an interesting thing. I haven't done real well on the smaller ones. The bigger ones have always been mine, but the spin fish is similar action and really hitting the scene this last year or so. Pretty effective lure. And what this does is, I mean, if you look at it, if you've ever fished herring or something like that up in Oregon, Washington, BC, I mean, herring is a huge thing, and they cut plug a herring. And that is basically what this thing imitates. So imagine if this was a herring, tails here, heads here. You cut it to cut plug a herring, you cut it at a double 45. So it's kind of this way and this way. So you get that angle right there. Let's see if we can get that little reflection. And that angle causes this thing to spin in the water. And that's what the guys who use real herring were doing. And so Brad's kind of took that concept. And there was actually a Lure Jensen cut plug. This isn't the first plastic cut plug, but this is definitely the most popular, most successful. But Lure Jensen had one years ago and just never caught on really. I guess the idea initially was, hey, if you don't have to cut all your herring and you can just use something that has the same action, it's a lot more efficient. So anyway, this is that's why it's called a cut plug, because it looks just like a cut plug herring. And I should have put a picture of a real cut plug herring in there, but troll it along and it just has this kind of rolling action to it. And then when you have it behind the flasher, so the flasher's rotating. Let's get that on here. So your flasher's rotating, and that's causing this guy to not only spin, he's spinning on his own, even if you just troll it without a flasher, right? He's doing this, but then you throw that flasher on and he's got this kind of side to side thing going too. So you got all kinds of motion happening. You know, it slows down and then speeds up on the turn and slows down. And so there's a lot going on there. And the combination of the spinning of that's the same thing the spinfish does. It just turns like this through the water. And it's interesting. You got 2 holes. I don't know if you can see that. It's backwards camera thing always messes me up. Now there's a hole here and a hole here for a left-hand spin or a right-hand spin. So I don't know if fish are that discerning. Maybe you use the one of them south of the equator, like you go down to Chile and you fish it the opposite way. I don't know. So anyway, spin fish. And then the other thing that's real popular, especially in the Columbia. Now, for those of you in the Sacramento system, this hasn't worked as well for me. Whoops, I'm losing my lid. But the 3.5 spinner, maybe even more popular than the cut plugs and the spin fish and all that. So let me get you a 3.5 spinner out here. Little tiny thing, right? Looks almost like a trout spinner, unweighted. And here's my whole box of them. Spinner Dave's Designs, tlspins.com, I think is what it is, makes just the coolest spinners out there. And guys are running these behind the flasher too, and they look amazing. So the flasher, again's doing its thing, the spinner's spinning, but then it's got that side to side action created by, or kind of a rolling action actually, that's brought to you by and courtesy of the flasher. So the little 3.5 spinner works great. Now, a lot of us used to troll big spinners, the big, the big jumbo blades. And those don't work as well behind the flasher. The little ones do, but I have not found them to be that great in the sack system for some reason. Maybe somebody else has had better success. I don't know. Just for me personally, I kind of stick to the plug baits. But here's Chuck. Chuck Taylor's kind of on my same page here. He says he's been trying the 3.5 size spinner in the sack for the last 2 years and can't get him to hit it. Yeah, I've caught him on it, but and I know the guys on the Columbia just kill them. I mean, that's, like I say, it's almost more popular than the cut plugs themselves these days. And I don't know. I that's why fishing's cool, I guess. There's just no rhyme or reason to some of this stuff. But anyway, so those are the kind of the three main things we're dragging behind. And then as far as rigging goes, there's a lot of ways to rig the cut plugs and the spin fish, guys here. This is off the Brad's website, and they've got a pretty good kind of diagram of lots of different ways to rig. One of the complaints you hear a lot from people with these baits is you get a lot of bites and you miss them. Part of that has to do with, again, going back to the rod. If you don't have the right rod, if you have too stiff a rod, fish grabs it and lets go of it because he feels resistance. So there's something to that. Maybe people aren't using sharp enough hooks. I mean, it's hard to say, but there's definitely something to the way fish bite these that, I mean, some days you have those. I mean, I guess it's the same with plugs, really. Sometimes you get 10 in a row, and then you mix the next 6. I mean, I have pretty good hookup ratio with these, and I keep it real simple, and I'll show you my rig here. Pretty simple. 40-pound mono. These fish aren't leader shy typically, so you want a big, heavy line so fish aren't biting through it. You're not getting, fish wraps up in the flasher or something the leader's going to hold. And then I'm running, leader length is always a big question too, right? So when I first started using these, people were saying, I'll run 36 inches or more. And some guys were saying, well, go ahead and we're using short ones. And it was kind of hard for me to bring myself to start short. I started longer. And then one day I'm looking off the back of the boat. One of my customers is reeling his rig up because, I don't know, we were moving spots or whatever. And I see the flasher just below the surface, and I see a Chinook grabbing at the flasher. Of course, if he's grabbing right here, my lure was 36 or whatever, 40 inches behind it. So he doesn't even see the thing, right? So then I was like, aha, we got to run these shorter. And so I tend to, my leaders have been getting shorter and shorter by the year. So 2 feet, 20 inches, again, day to day kind of changes, and water clarity, and you got to kind of feel it out. But I think the whole idea is lost on you with these things if you're running your stuff too far behind. Again, this is attracting fish to your rig. You don't want your bait so far behind it that he doesn't see it, right? So I'm running leaders shorter than longer. Anyway, let's see. Back to the rigging here real quick. You saw in that previous picture all these different, 2-hook rigs and treble and single and 2 trebles and all kinds of things. I have found that the single hook, and you got to get it back behind the bait. So you see here that there's the line goes through the holes in the lure. We have a bead and then some tubing to get that lure back, not the lure, sorry, the hook back behind the bait. Because if it's stuck, the hook's up here instead of back here, the fish is going to bite that, and he's going to, the bait almost acts as a hook protector, keeping the fish from getting it. So we're going to extend that back a little ways. And I'm using a Gamakatsu Big River bait hook. They are that hook is really deadly. And what I like about it is when you get a fish that bites it, a good solid bite, and this is where you get them right there in the corner of the jaw. That fish is not coming off unless the sea lion bites its head off, right? And that corner right there, that's you get them there and they're pretty much dead. So yes, I missed some. I mean, there's just no two ways around that, but I don't miss that many. I would say, God, I don't know, 80% fish that bite that get hooked. Now you may lose them in the fight or whatever, but we get pretty good hookup ratio with that rig. So I'll go back to it real quick just so you can see it again. And then again, you see on we were stressing bead chain swivels. Well, here's another one on the end of my my leader, just because again, that thing's spinning, the flasher's spinning. You got all kinds of stuff going on. So you definitely want to try to reduce line twist. Okay. So this is another way I've rigged them with some success. You run a treble up into what they call the little hook garage there. And then I have the line, I tie it's kind of tricky, but you tie an egg loop like you would for the row knot on that treble. And then you have one, same thing on the back end. And it's kind of amazing to me because the treble rig right there, where it's sitting, there's only one point that's really exposed, yet you catch a lot of fish that have all 3 points in. And of course, that whole bait could slide up the line as soon as the fish bites. So that may be part of the deal there. But that rig is kind of my number 2, I'd say, go to. But definitely mix, just try till you find something that works for you. Everybody's style's a little bit different. So, what I'm doing may be good for you or not. So let's go on. We're getting lots of questions, and hang in there, guys. I'll get to them. A lot of them I'm seeing are kind of coming up with stuff or along with stuff I'm about to talk about. In fact, we're going to get Jack was asking about any favorite scents for your cut plugs. We're going to get to that in just a second, Jack. Okay, so the cool thing about these baits, so this is a Brad's cut plug. Got the little rubber band tubing at the end, and then you open it up just like the one on the picture there, and you can stuff, well, they come stock with a little sponge in there, if I can get that out. So you got a little sponge. You can soak that with your favorite scent, or you can take it out and load it up with your favorite bait. Now, what most folks do is add a bunch of tuna, right? That's kind of the number one thing. And by the way, the spin fish is a little different. You can pull it apart, and where are we here? There we go. And you can stuff a bunch of stuff in there, whatever bait you want, tuna, eggs, herring chunks. But the good old tuna fish works really well pretty much anywhere. And you can run it straight, or you can start to add scents. I like to add a little Procure sardine oil and sometimes shrimp oil. I mean, again, every day is a little bit different, but the sardine oil just kind of is a confidence thing for me because of all the years I spent trolling, quick fish, flat fish with a sardine wrap. So a couple drops of that. And what I'll do is open the can in the morning, put some in there, and just kind of let it marinate. You can do it overnight too if you promise not to spill it in your wife's fridge. But the thing that you do want to note, though, is you want to use or purchase tuna packed in vegetable oil, not the water pack stuff, simply because that oil is it's a great, adhesive, I guess you'd say. It that scent really sticks to that oil, and it kind of gets everywhere and leaves a big oily trail. So the water packed tuna, and if you've ever made the mistake of buying the oil packed for making tuna fish sandwiches and instead of the water pack, you're like, whoa, I mean, it smells like bait, right? It's full of oil, whereas the water pack stuff is a lot cleaner. I'm sure it would work, but it just isn't going to hold the scent as long. Some guys are taking their own tuna bellies and rendering the fat out of them, the oil. And I'm sure that actually probably works a little better, but I don't have that kind of time, nor, the desire to boil down tuna bellies. So good old can, chicken of the sea works great. Just make sure it's not packed in water. And then add your favorite scent to it, and you're good to go. So, okay, moving on, because we got stuff going. We got lots of questions. One of the things I get asked a lot about is, how do you store these cut plugs? Because you're rigging them on a leader, like we were saying, from 2 feet to 3 or 4 feet. Where do you put that thing when you're done? Well, fishing out of, they're near Portland. They have these little leader boards. It's just a foam board. You wrap your stuff on them, and they fit in little plano boxes. So nice. I mean, I other than that, I don't know what you do with these things, because it would be totally unruly. You don't want to leave them on your rods at the end of the day. And that reminds me. So when you are done, the tuna, again, it depends on water temp and speed and all that. But I'll do a 1 mile troll. And then at the end of that troll, during that troll, I'm going to rig up 4 or 6 more, however many people we have on the boat, and put tuna in the fresh tuna in the next round. We get done with that troll, disconnect those lures, put the fresh ones on, do another troll, and just kind of keep doing that. I mean, tuna will last, I don't know, a good hour. The fresher, the better, the more scent. It's hard to go wrong with more scent versus less scent, but don't just put it in and then troll all day and expect to get bit. Now you can, but the more you refresh your bait, the better. And a can of tuna is $1, so it's really not that bad. Now you can put other stuff in there. I've used eggs, cured roe. I've used chopped up sardines, chopped up herring, chopped up mackerel. Who knows? Power bait. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can throw in there. Anything that gives off a scent. Again, as with most scents, I don't think any scent particularly calls a salmon from across the river to come up and eat your baits. Like, oh, that smells like tuna, and then have them dash, 40 yards over to get it. I think what scent does is mainly just kind of masks other scents. I always think about the guy who stopped at the AMPM on the way to the river and grabbed some flaming hot Doritos or something for breakfast. And, you got that yellow or orange stuff all over your hands, and then you touch your lure and you're transferring that. Tobacco is kind of a known fish repellent. So somebody's smoking and then touches their bait. You go and get diesel and spill a little on your hands. Well, now you got, diesel or gasoline, and then you touch your lure. So I think all that stuff, it just kind of helps fish not want to bite it. So by putting some scent on there, you're masking that, and it just makes them more apt to grab it. Now, the other thing is too, I mean, you think about we're mammals, and think of all the mammals that try to eat salmon along their journey. So there might be a little instinctive, like, ooh, smells like mammal, I don't want it. So anyway, put some scent on the sucker, and you're good to go. Whoops, we're going the wrong way. All right, so now let's talk about my spread here. And I always troll downstream or with the tide, whatever direction the water's going. That's the way I go. Couple reasons. One is where I'm fishing on Sacramento River. It's a big highway. There's very few holes. It's just kind of a ditch, and fish are just passing through. So I want to cover as much ground as I can. It's not like you're finding a 50-foot hole and the fish are stacked in it. Typically, we're just fishing for these travelers. So I want to cover as much ground as I can. So by going downhill, I'm going faster, thus covering more territory. Whereas going upstream, you're going slower against the tide and or the current, whatever it is, and you're just not covering the water. Now, the other thing I'll tell you is when you are going against the current or tide, there's going to be more resistance on your flasher and your bait, causing it to probably spin faster. And in general, with all things salmon, my thoughts always go to, I don't want something spinning fast, like if I'm fishing just like casting a meps off the bank, say. I don't want that blade spinning fast. I want it kind of just doing this slow, pulsating thump, thump, thump. In my mind, that slower action, that kind of pulsating, giving off that flash and vibration this way instead of fast like that, is more attractive to kings. Now, I've never asked one that, but That's in my experience what I've found. So if you're going against the tide or the current, you got all that stuff going really fast because you're going, you're trolling. Plus you got the speed of the current going the other way. So I tend to go downhill, or I always go downhill. Okay, so as far as the spread goes, you can see we talked about earlier on the shorter rods, the 8.3s that I use go off the back, and then we use the longer 9.6 rods off the side just to kind of keep everything separated. And so what I do, and again, everybody has their own take on this, but I'm going to put lighter sinkers on those back 2 rods and get them out a little further away from the boat. And so instead of having everybody let out at the same time, I'm going to have those 2 back ones, the ones on the transom, the stern, have them go out first. And whereas the outrigger rod guys on the sides are going to just hold off for just a sec. Get those ones out the back. Now they're pretty clear. Now you can drop those with heavier lead off the sides down. And so they're not getting back into the spread unless you start doing a lot of zigzags. But in general, this just kind of keeps all your stuff separated, not on top of each other, gives you a wider spread. So you have a better attraction radius, but also keeps you from getting all your gear super funky. And funky it can be, let me tell you. So when you're letting out, this is, look closely at this little bit of macrame. This happens more times than I care to share, and it always happens when somebody, like I tell people, we have the line counters on the reels, and I tell people, let it out literally like a foot at a time, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 feet. I mean, if you just open the bail and let it go down, that sinker drops fast, the flasher comes up and wraps around the line on the way down, and it just turns into a bloody mess. And when you get one of these, I was telling you about how it sucks to get one of these rigs snagged. It's almost worse to get one of these rigs boogered up. And then if you get 2 of them together, oh my God, it's really ugly. So just make sure you let them down slow. And once you get them down, what I do, again, I'm fishing reasonably shallow water, 18 to 30 feet. And most of the time the fish are near the bottom. So I just want my gear near it. So I'll hit the bottom and come up a little bit. There's times when they're suspended. And so you come up quite a bit. And it's in a little bit of an exact science because you don't know exactly where your rig is. But generally, to start with, get down near the bottom and then work from there. I mean, that's usually most of the time we're going to find the kings. As far as trolling speed goes, everybody's got a different take. I see guys going 90 miles an hour past me. I'm usually one of the slower guys. It all works. And again, it depends on water temp and where you are and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't tell you. I have not the foggiest idea. Like, some guys will say, well, I go 2.31798 miles per hour. Exactly. How fast do you go? I don't know. I never look because I don't look at the graph. I look at my rods, and it's a feel thing for me. I'm more of a kind of a feel guy than regimented. It's got to be, 1.7 to 2.2 miles an hour, whatever. I watch my rod tips. I never look at the speed on the graph. And you can see, when this flasher is doing its thing, your rod tip's going to pulse. And I just kind of like a little steady I'm sort of looking for this. I don't really like it like this. Again, some guys troll fast like that and do really well. I'm a little bit more relaxed, chill, kind of like just the little boom, ba-doom, ba-doom. They don't make that sound, but you know what I mean. And the other thing is pay attention to those rod tips because if one doesn't do anything or it's got a weird little action to it, something's going on. If you've got this kind of thing going, usually means 2 of them are together. Bad deal. See the picture and you'll see why that's a bad deal. So anyway, that's again, it's a feel thing for me. Some people are just more about the exact numbers. I can't tell you the exact number because I don't know how fast I troll. But I just like to keep my stuff near the bottom and thumping kind of nicely and go from there. Now, when you get bit, these things are interesting. Now, there's a couple trains of thought here. Your rod tip will be pumping, and then you see the fish kind of. It's like a little bit like a quick fish takedown. You get the kind of hard pumps. Some guys like to jump up and grab it right out of the rod holder. I like to let them pump on a little bit and turn before we get to them. I have a friend who really backs off the drags and lets them run for a long time first, hoping that they'll just get hooked up. I have a tough time with that one, but I guess what I'm trying to say is generally don't race and just set the hook. I would say, let that fish pump it a few times and then kind of come up tight on him. Every fish is different, of course. Every situation is different, but don't go too quick on the hook set, and you'll be all right, hopefully. And that's the bite. That's what we're talking about. So let's get to some questions here. We got a lot of them here. So let's scroll back up and see what we have. We answered that. Here we go. So this is back to talking about the Douglas rods that I was using. Brett bought both models I suggested and had trouble with one. Fred called me direct, took care of it. Best customer service ever. That's cool. Like to hear that. Let's see. Flasher breakaway. Yeah. Oh, let's see. Travis says, have you seen the new plastic triangle spreaders? I believe Short Bus makes them any better than wire spreaders. I have not. It's cool. There's stuff always getting better. The tackle and the technology seems to always get better. So I don't use spreaders at all. Even when I'm just trolling straight spinners or flatfish, I just use a dropper. So, but those might be cool. Yeah. Let's see. Brad Hawkins. Hunkins. Sorry, Brad. Oh, yeah. Are you a Humboldt State footballer? Right on, Brad. Cool. Let's see what else we got here. Get those questions in if you guys have any. Let's see. What's the minimum depth and length of the run you need to effectively use this method? Seems like limited spots available to use on the feather. Okay, yeah. So Brian, I have not used it on the feather at all. I think that water's generally too clear and too skinny for the most part. I was going to say this technique seems to work the best lower in the systems, but that's not true because the guys catch them up way above the Tri-Cities area on the Columbia with them. So, the feather's just such a skinny river. I'm not saying don't try it, but there's a lot of wood in there. That's the problem with this rig. You could end up blowing a lot of cash. I would say you want it, I feel comfortable, 15 feet. I've fished it in places where I could see the flasher, and I know places like Tillamook Bay where those chrome kooky kings will eat it right in your prop wash. But here in Central California, where they're 100 plus miles inland, they're a little less aggressive like that. So you could try it on the feather. I'm certainly not going to discourage it because it's worth a shot. But for the most part, I fish it on the sack, at least 14 feet deep and deeper. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. So we answered this. Cali Republic, troll with or against the tide. I'm always trolling with it. Let's see. What else do we have here? Let's see. I was talking about the 3.5 spinners not working very well for me. And Chuck Taylor also said the same thing here on the Sacramento. And sorry, JR, hey, don't let me be the guy who gets you. I mean, you might slay them on them. I know guys do. I just, for some reason, they don't work for me. And it's in full disclosure, right? I mean, I've used them. I usually use them on my rod, the experimental rod, but I've never gone out and just said, okay, I'm using these things all day on all 4, 5, 6 rods. So maybe you gotta give it a little more use than that. But anyway, so let's see what else we got. Snowman Silver, thanks, Snowman. He's also asking, totally off topic here, ports at Pyramid. Pyramid, as far as I know, Snowman is still closed. The tribe has been closed for several months. So anyway, setback for the Metro Garcia Bend section. Setback, I assume you're talking about distance between the flasher and the bait. And again, you probably sent this in earlier, but before we got to it, but 2 to 3 feet was going to be my best suggestion there. Troll speed, we talked about that. I have no idea what I troll at. I just go with the flow, man. Don Montgomery, aloha. What the heck? You in Hawaii? That's not fair. James Kramer asks if you can fish a spinner on anchor on Sacramento River. Absolutely. You just got to have enough current to get that thing. Watch your rod tip. If it's not vibrating, then you're probably stalled out and not working. Let's see. Brian Killer B says, you ever notice the difference with this rig you're using, your Minn Kota versus your kicker? I haven't, and oftentimes I use both at the same time. I used to always only troll with my Minn Kota downhill when I was fishing flatfish because I was fishing them slower. This rig, you got to troll a little bit faster to get that thing to turn over. And so I found that my Minn Kota was not lasting the whole day, especially if you had a little wind going. So I have kind of modified it, and I run, I turn my kicker on, my Yamaha, and just put it in gear and lock the helm lock, whatever you call it, so it just goes straight. And then I use my Minn Kota to steer and just give it a little, you can run your Minn Kota on 2 or 3 instead of 7 or whatever, and the battery lasts. And I haven't, I don't feel like these fish here, at least in the Sac, are very boat shy. I mean, there's so many boats going over them. It doesn't, my whole feeling always is I don't worry too much about a boat scaring a fish if you can't see the bottom, just as kind of a general rule of thumb. Now, if you're, floating over them and you can see them, that's a whole different story. But that's kind of my take on that. Good question. Thanks, Brian. Jack Johnson, any sac fishing reports yet this season? They're catching some fish up Woodson Bridge way, up that way and above. Not a ton of fish. And they're a little bronzy yet, but they're coming through almost 80-degree water down in the lower end. So poor suckers are getting cooked on the way up. But the first big push of fall fish really hasn't come in yet. Wilson, what's a good guide to go by as far as what depth you would be at? Oh, as far as the angle to the dangle? I don't know. What I do is just reestablish bottom contact every so often so you're there. And then it's a little bit of a guesstimation. I mean, if you see fish suspended, it's kind of a inexact science unless you it's not like downrigger trolling where you can put it down to exact depth. So it's a little bit of a guesswork there. And the good news is, though, on this whole churning flasher thing, right? This draws fish from a long ways off, so you don't have to be specific. You want to be above them versus below them. Fish see up way better than they are able to look down. So err on the side of being a little higher in the water column there, Wilson, than down below. But I mean, this thing's got a lot of flash, a lot of vibration, a lot of thump. And so, like I told the story earlier about the one that was the king that was chasing this and biting the back end of it. I mean, they draw them in for a while because that was on the surface by the time I could see it. So anyway, that's, I don't have an exact guide on that, but that'll give you, just keep it near the bottom, generally speaking. Let's see, Tony. Love it. Pro Troll and Brad's Cut Plugs are my favorite rig these days. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's a lot of junk on your line. I mean, I kind of miss the days of the just a couple ounce sinker and a flatfish, but I definitely think we catch more fish with this. Okay, Ken asks, how often do you pull the rigs in to check for any debris? Do you wait until the dangle changes, or do you pull them up every so often regardless? That depends. Like a couple years ago, we had a lot of grass in the it was coming out of the American River and floating down into the Sac. And it was one of those deals where you had to check it pretty often. Normally I go on the, as long as this rod tip is doing its thing and not getting, not having some weird, flat action or erratic action. I think you're good to go. Of course, you can always, something can catch on the cut plug back there, but generally speaking, if it's not too weedy, then I just pay attention to the rod tip, and every once in a while you reel up and you go, oh, I wonder how long I was dragging that. But generally speaking, I don't have to pull them in very often. Again, depends on where you're fishing, right? And then Ken says, awesome show, man. Thank you. Best water attempt to use this technique, using Silvertrons this morning in, doesn't say what degree of water you were in there, Al, but generally speaking, I don't like to fish for kings in anything over 70 degrees. A 70 is kind of my upper threshold of comfort zone. I know they'll bite a little bit once in a while in that, but at that point, the fish are more consumed with surviving than biting. And then the other thing that happens if you hook a fish in that water, that plus 70 degree stuff, if you hook one and fight him and he gets off, you probably just killed him. Not that, you weren't intending to do that. Obviously, you wanted to kill him in your cooler, not just leave him for dead. But yeah, so I mean, anything under 70, it's a go for me. We don't get cold enough here for me to give you a bottom end of the spectrum. I mean, we're happy when the water gets to like 66. We're like, ooh, it's cold. Time to go fish. So, but I would suspect if you were fishing this morning, it was probably pretty hot, and plus 70 degrees just isn't. I just don't feel like that salmon fishing really. It's just, I feel bad for them. It's like they're cooking. They came out of a 52 degree ocean or something and into 75, 80 degrees. But anyway, so that's kind of, we could go on all day about this, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you got any more questions, get them in a hurry. Otherwise, we will tune out, and I got to get up early and go Mackinac guiding tomorrow. But I will be salmon fishing on the Sac. Starting, give or take, about middle of September, and that'll take me to, some years it takes me to December. Again, everything's, weather and water dependent. Some years it rains early and kind of gets muddy, but I'll be fishing into November, sac fishing. Hang on, we got another one here. Brian says, when you're running this rig on the Sac, there's quite a bit of traffic. Do you hug the sides? Is it true that the most part that salmon stay closer to shore? I know there's docks, wing dams, etc. Yeah. You know what? There's a lot of, normally that I would say yes. Salmon always going to kind of gravitate towards the banks a little bit. I don't see that so much in the Sac. It's a big ditch, and particularly when you get close to shore, you've got pilings and rocks and things where you can lose your $50 setup. I catch just as many of them right down the middle. I kept a logbook one year to try to figure out, I'd take a troll down the left side, down the middle, and the right side, and then, just do that all day. And it really was inconclusive. I mean, I think it just depends on the day. Fish are just kind of here, they're where you find them. I hate to be so vague, but in that big ditch, they can literally be anywhere. And the one thing I will tell you, if you catch one, oftentimes they're in school. And if you kind of take a mental note of where you were, it's hard to do because you're fighting a fish, and then you net it, take pictures, bleed it, put it on ice, all that stuff. So it takes a while to get back up and running. But I always, after I catch a fish, I run back up above where we started, or above where we caught the fish, and start up there and troll back through there with the thought of, there's a little pot of them there. I mean, he might have been a solo runner. You never know. But it's always a good idea to try to go back through there and maximize, because these things come through in spurts, at least down where we are. And you can go through some doldrums, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of fish. Brian Alder says, have you tried that? Yeah, spinfish lure yet? I talked about those earlier, Brian. Yeah, I got one right here. This is a little guy, but yeah, I really like the spinfish. I don't know if you could say it's better or worse, or I mean, just to me, it seems like it's just as effective as the brads. And then some days, maybe one, they like a little different spin one day versus the other. But yeah, they're great. And I like the downside to the brads. And if you put too much tuna or whatever in here, and which we all try to do, it's like more is better, right? And you jam it in there, you can break the hinge and break the lure. Whereas the spinfish has, instead of the hinge thing, this one's a little gummed up, I guess. There we go. You put a bunch of, God, what is in there? I guess I didn't wash that one last time. There's some eggs or something in there. Doesn't smell too bad. But yeah, that one's a little easier, less apt to break if you stuff it too much. The one thing I will that kind of reminds me of is when you get done with these, empty all the tuna out and hose them off or rinse them off so that stuff doesn't get all nasty on you for the next time you go out. So anyway, all right, guys and gals, appreciate it. We've been at this for, an hour and 11 minutes now. So next week, I don't know who's joining me. Maybe it's just me again. I don't know. I've been fishing so much every day. It's hard to plan ahead. So usually, like in fact, today my son said, "Dad, who's on your show tonight?" And I said, me, me, I guess me. So anyway, we'll be back next week. And if you, I guess I don't need to tell you this, but if you missed this, which would be weird to tell you that because you're watching it right now, but somehow if you missed this, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm tired. I'm delirious. But if you missed, how about this? Let's back up. If you missed any of the previous episodes, you can always, they're archived on my YouTube channel, Fish with JD. So you can go back and watch those anytime. And if you wanted to rewatch this one, you can watch that too. So anyway, good luck out there this fall. If you guys happen to troll by, say hi. The Sacramento River is supposed to have a nice big run of kings and big size, large size fish too. So hopefully that is the case. The ones out in the ocean have been big. So anyway, we will catch you guys next week, 7 p.m. Wednesday night, fishwithjd.com. If you want to check other stuff out, and then if you want to subscribe, please do. Fish with JD on YouTube. And again, that's where all these are archived. So until next week, I'll catch you guys later.